Okay, this is a video that I wanted to make after my Tibet trip. So I feel like there are a lot of things that are unknown before we went for the trip, and YouTube was a very good source of information as to what I should expect before going for the trip. However, I felt like there were certain things that should be like can be said, like I could share with you guys before going to Tibet, so that you all can better understand what are the things that might entail and the amount of additional cost that you might need to fork out just in case of your own inabilities or your own incapabilities in terms of oxygen or whatnot. So basically, while packing for Tibet, I was very unsure of what to wear in Tibet because it was basically summer, but yet we had to bring jackets and puffers and whatnot. And so I got very confused because I was like, okay, so it's going to be summer there, so the only thing that is cold there will be Mount Everest. But then again, if you go to the lakes and whatnot, it really depends on whether it is raining or it's not raining. So then again, of course, you need to bring your different layers. And the one thing that we were afraid of were that there were no washing machines, so we had to, like, all three of us, we kind of like, we should have asked the tour guide whether the hotels had washing machines, because in China most of the time they have washing machines in their hotel and it's free to use. But we didn't ask, and it didn't occur to us to ask our tour guide either. So we actually brought a full load of almost 10 days of clothes because we thought there was no washing machine for us. So that's number one, to basically bring enough clothes, so much that is enough for a few days, because your hotels definitely provide washing machines, so you don't have to bring a full load of 10 days worth of clothes if your tour is that long. So yeah, that's number one. Number two is that before we went for the trip, we actually went to the doctor to get our altitude sickness medicine. This means that you have to eat these pills 2 days in advance before you go to a high altitude area such as Tibet. So for us, we heed the advice and we ate 2 days before we went to Tibet. And so throughout the trip, we did not feel any symptoms of altitude sickness like head pain, dizziness, very weak and breathless and whatnot. So that was the good part of eating the altitude sickness medicine. But what's that word? But the dangerous thing is that because on one of the days where we ascended much higher, we went to climb up the hills and whatnot, and when we came back we were feeling fine. However, our tour guide told us to measure our oxygen levels, to which it was okay for one of my friends. Mine was a bit low and my other friend was much lower. So then the tour guide was like, you guys need to breathe in some oxygen because your oxygen levels are low. So that's a bad side of the altitude sickness medicine, in a sense that you will never know that your body is lacking oxygen, because I think the pills actually help to cover or help to avoid all these symptoms of altitude sickness like headache, dizziness or like breathlessness. So that is one thing that you need to take note if you are going to take the altitude sickness pills, because your oxygen level might be low and it could be dangerous if it drops below a certain number like 70 or whatnot. But for us, one of my friend actually dropped below 80, so she was around 70 plus. So the tour guide told her to faster breathe in some oxygen because it might be dangerous if it goes further down. So yeah, so that's the only point I have for the altitude sickness pills. Next up, if you have a good tour guide, I think he or she will actually help you to buy oxygen, but only what you need. So basically, when we went to the oxygen shop, the shop that sells oxygen, basically they were asking us to buy one big tank and 2 small tanks. However, our tour guide told us that we only need 1 big tank and 1 small tank, so we don't have to be. She just helped us straight. She told the shop owner straight away that we are just going to buy 1 big tank and 1 small tank. So hopefully your tour guide is a good tour guide, in a sense where she knows your needs and she won't ask you to overbuy oxygen to help the shop to earn more money. However, after buying 1 big tank and 1 small tank, maybe because we had the altitude medicine pills, we felt nothing and we thought that maybe the small tank was not needed, and the one big oxygen tank was enough for the rest of our trip, because most of the time you're in a car, so you can breathe in the big tank of oxygen. And so we thought the small oxygen tank wasn't really necessary. However, since we already paid for it, we just blast our oxygen and make sure we finish being kiasu Singaporeans. So that's it for the oxygen part of it. The price of the oxygen differs, I think. So what I want to say, I think they made it really expensive a few years ago, or was it maybe just last year. However, the government there actually decreased the price of oxygen because they felt that it was very dangerous, because many people didn't want to buy oxygen as it was too expensive, and they ended up having to do a lot of medevac here and there to fetch people down to a lower altitude because they did not have enough oxygen. So therefore they made oxygen more accessible and cheaper. So yeah. The next thing is that if you are someone who loves adventure and whatnot, then be prepared that this trip is not adventurous in a way where you keep hiking, because most of the time you'll be inside the car for 6 to 7 hours every day. So basically you're inside the car driving, and then you stop for, after 3 hours you have to stop for 20 minutes because the driver needs to rest. So basically sometimes you'll stop at sightseeing spots, and it's just 5 to 10 minutes of walking, seeing the very small things, that small area of things that they have to offer, and the scenery spots to take photos at. And then after that you go back to the car and you sit for 3 to 4 hours again before you reach the next location. So every day it's like this, and so you just have to be prepared that you need to bring snacks in the car, and then that you'll be inside the car for a very long amount of hours every day. So just have to be prepared for that. However, if you are looking at hiking and doing all the sporty stuff and whatnot, then maybe hiking Mount Everest base camp will be for you. However, if you're on a Tibet tour, then just be prepared that you'll be in a car most of the time. Overall, I think the trip was great. However, I won't do it again, solely because I feel like the scenery there can be seen elsewhere where oxygen doesn't matter. So the only reason why I went for this trip and was excited for this trip was because of Mount Everest. So I guess I was really lucky to have been able to see the full mountain in its glory without clouds covering it. So yeah, that was the only highlight of the trip for me. Honestly speaking, the mountains there are really nice. However, I feel like I can see these mountains in other parts of China or in other countries like New Zealand. So I would rather pay the same amount of price I paid in Tibet and spend it in New Zealand or Europe or somewhere else. However, this is just a once in a lifetime kind of experience. So if you really want to experience something like Tibet, then you can just go for it. However, if you think you can see mountains elsewhere and Tibet is not something that you're very interested in, then I would say that you can just forego the experience unless you really want to see Mount Everest. Yeah. Overall, if I break down the cost, I actually paid about 4.3k, around 4k, 4.1 to 4.3k on the whole trip, including Xi'an, which we spent 3 days 2 nights in. Also because our flight got cancelled without us knowing. They did not send any email notification. No notification was given from our airline. And so when we arrived at the airport, they were like, oh, there's no flight such as this. And so my lesson learned is that if as much as possible not to take a low cost carrier from China, because they do not have the accountability at all. And if you ask for compensation, they require you to have a China bank account so that they can give you the compensation. If not, there is no way you're going to get your compensation if you do not have a China bank account. So yeah, and it was crazy because no information was given to us, and it was just poor show of the airline because they could have done better. However, on hindsight, at least we managed to rebook another ticket and managed to reach Singapore 12 hours later. So it wasn't that bad, and we managed to claim insurance as well. So insurance is important, guys, especially when you go to countries like these, or if you buy tickets that are from low cost carrier, because sometimes they are not as service provide they do not provide such great service as compared to full cost carriers. Sorry, my camera kind of died, but I just want to say that overall, if you do not want to hike Mount Everest base camp, then Mount Everest Tibet will be great for you, because the car literally just drives up. You just need to walk a bit and you see the mountain in its full glory, obviously of hoping that no clouds cover the mountain. If not, then yeah, that's it for me. This is what I feel like, maybe some tips or like what to expect if you really want to go to Tibet. And hopefully this video finds you well. See ya, bye.